The roasted chicken sat untouched in the center of the table. I took a deep breath, my fork trembling slightly. "I've decided to start a charity," I announced. "For single mothers, to help with food, childcare, and job training." The clinking of cutlery stopped. My sister, Vanessa, put down her wine glass with a sharp click. Then she burst out laughing, a harsh, grating sound. She rolled her eyes so dramatically I thought they might stay that way. "You can barely pay your own rent, Chloe. Maybe you should start by saving yourself before you try to save the world." A few nervous chuckles traveled around the family table. My face burned. I forced a thin smile, my heart pounding a painful rhythm against my ribs. Something inside me, a fragile hope, didn't just break, it hardened into resolve. I excused myself from the table, mumbling about the bathroom. In the hallway mirror, I saw my own determined eyes staring back. I whispered the vow, my voice steady and low, "I'll show her. I'll show all of them." Back in my cramped apartment, the laughter still echoed in my mind. I looked at the small vision board above my desk. It wasn't fancy, just a corkboard filled with pictures, a young mother I'd helped at the clinic, a toddler taking his first steps, a quote about compassion. My heart still burned with the purpose they all mocked. The dream felt more real than their doubts. I pulled out a fresh notebook, its pages blank and full of potential. I started sketching logos, writing down names for the charity, outlining possible programs. The numbers were scary, but the vision was clear. For hours, I got lost in the plans, the outside world fading away. The following morning, the sound of paper sliding under my door broke my concentration. I opened it, my heart sinking. Taped to the outside was a stark, official-looking notice. My stomach dropped as I read the words, "Eviction notice." My rent was 2 weeks late. Panic clawed up my throat. Swallowing my pride, I went to Vanessa's spacious townhouse. I didn't want money, just advice, or maybe just a sisterly hug. She answered the door in a silk robe, smelling of expensive coffee. "I'm in a bit of a bind," I confessed, my voice shaky. She smirked, not even inviting me in. "See? This is what I was talking about. You're not cut out for these big dreams, Chloe. You're a nurse. A good one. Stick to your patients and a life you can actually handle." Her words were like shards of ice. I walked away, feeling smaller than I ever had. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. It was a text from our mom. "Honey, Vanessa told us you're having another one of your meltdowns. Are you okay? Do you need to come home?" The betrayal cut deeper than the criticism. She hadn't just dismissed me, she'd twisted my struggle into a story for the family. The next day at the clinic, my spirit felt heavy. Then I met Anna, a young mother with tired eyes, clutching a crying baby. She couldn't afford the antibiotic prescription. I sat with her, held her hand, and used my own employee discount to cover the cost. The profound gratitude in her eyes, the way her shoulders relaxed from sheer relief, it reignited a fire in me. That was it. That was the purpose. The charity wouldn't start with a massive grant or a fancy office. It would start with helping one person. It would start with me, with whatever I had. I went home, ignoring the eviction notice, and filled out the application for a small community grant. It was a long shot, but it was a start. I clicked submit with a trembling finger, a flicker of hope returning. Weeks passed. The eviction notice loomed. Finally, an email arrived from the Grant Foundation. My hand shook as I opened it. "We regret to inform you, insufficient credentials, not a viable candidate at this time." The rejection was a physical blow. I slid to the floor, tears of frustration and shame streaming down my face. It felt like the universe was agreeing with Vanessa. As I sat there surrounded by my failed plans, a flyer stuck under my door caught my eye. It was for a free nonprofit startup seminar downtown. It felt like a sign, a tiny lifeline. The next day, I sat in the back of the seminar room, feeling utterly out of place. During a break, I was nervously explaining my idea to myself when a woman with kind eyes and silver hair turned to me. She listened intently, then handed me a simple business card. "Call me," she said softly. "I have a soft spot for people who don't know how to quit." The woman was Linda Graves. She was a retired, legendary nonprofit founder. We met for coffee, and I spilled my entire story, the dream, the laughter, the eviction, the rejection. She didn't flinch. Instead, she agreed to mentor me. She taught me how to build from nothing, writing a business plan, recruiting volunteers, leveraging community resources. She saw a passion in me that reminded her of her younger self. Our sessions were grueling but inspiring. One afternoon, as we reviewed my fledgling budget, she looked at me over her glasses. "Be prepared, Chloe," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "The people closest to you, the ones who saw you struggle, will often try the hardest to hold you back. Your success forces them to look at their own lives." Her warning settled in my stomach like a stone. Hoping to bridge the gap, I confided in Vanessa again. I told her about Linda, about the solid plan we were building. I showed her the new, more professional proposal. She smiled, a thin, tight-lipped smile. "That's great, Chloe," she said. I foolishly thought I'd gotten through to her. An hour later, my phone exploded with notifications. I opened our family group chat. There, for everyone to see, was a screenshot of my failed grant application. Vanessa had captioned it, "Looks like Chloe's big break was a big breakup." Face with tears of joy followed by a string of laughing emojis from a few relatives. My face burned with a fresh wave of humiliation. Seconds later, my dad called. "Chloe, your mother, and I think it's time to stop this. You're embarrassing the family with these unrealistic fantasies." That was the final straw. I stopped returning family calls. I blocked Vanessa on social media. The pain was immense, but it fueled a fierce determination. I threw every spare minute and every last penny into my cause. I started calling it the Second Start Foundation. I spent my weekends organizing local food drives, using the name to build recognition. I was exhausted, but for the first time, I was free from their opinions. One rainy Saturday, as I was handing out boxes of groceries from the back of my beat-up car, a woman approached me. She introduced herself as a reporter from the local paper. "I've been hearing whispers about what you're doing," she said, pulling out a notepad. "Can I ask you a few questions?" My heart leaped into my throat. The article ran on the front page of the community section. Local nurse starts charity from her car, aims to help struggling mothers. It featured a picture of me and Anna, the mother from the clinic. The phone started ringing non-stop. Donations of clothes and canned food piled up in my apartment. People volunteered their time. I became a small-town inspiration, a symbol of grassroots hope. I was busy and happier than I had ever been. Across town, Vanessa scrolled through the online article on her tablet, her face a mask of stunned silence. Her perfectly manicured finger hovered over the picture of me, smiling proudly. A sharp, unfamiliar pang twisted in her stomach. It wasn't pride. It was the cold, sharp sting of jealousy. Months later, I was preparing for our first major fundraiser. It was a humble dinner, but it promised thousands in crucial donations. My old car, packed with supplies, sputtered and died on the highway exit ramp. I stared at the steam rising from the hood in despair. I missed the entire event. By the time a tow truck arrived, I was sitting on the curb, head in my hands, defeated. The fundraiser had failed without me there to speak. The driver, a burly man with a gentle face, helped me hook up the car. "Rough day?" he asked kindly. I nodded, wiping my eyes. "You could say that." He handed me his card. "Call the shop tomorrow. We'll figure it out." Little did I know, that simple act of kindness was about to change everything. The mechanic, Mark Dawson, looked at my car and heard the story of the missed fundraiser. He was a quiet man who had lost his wife to illness years before. He saw my heartbreak and my determination. A week later, a bank transfer arrived in the Second Start account. It was for $5,000, exactly what we'd hoped to raise. The donation was anonymous, but I knew. It was just enough to keep the dream alive, to pay for a storage unit and keep the food drives going. That same day, Vanessa posted a glossy photo online. It was her brand new, state-of-the-art kitchen remodel, with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. The caption boasted, "Finally, a kitchen worthy of a proper dinner party. #blessed #hard work pays off." The contrast between our worlds had never been wider. At Thanksgiving, the air was thick with tension. I went for my mother's sake. Vanessa held court, detailing her kitchen renovation. Then she turned to me, a sugary smile on her face. "And how is your little project going, Chloe? Still handing out canned beans?" The table went quiet. I looked at her, my voice calm and clear. "It's going well, thank you. Last month, the Second Start Foundation provided assistance to 42 local families." The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Vanessa's husband, Tom, broke it with a nervous chuckle. "Well, with the way the stock market's looking, maybe I should apply for help." A few people laughed, but it was hollow and uncomfortable. The joke had fallen flat. Whispers began circulating about Tom's company. There were rumors of an SEC investigation, of risky investments gone wrong. Vanessa brushed it off at the gym, telling her friends, "It's just market volatility. We're completely untouchable." She continued her lavish spending, a desperate performance of normalcy. Meanwhile, my world was expanding. Linda called me, her voice buzzing with excitement. "Chloe, Mark Dawson, your anonymous donor, wants to meet. He's impressed and is considering a major donation to help you expand the foundation statewide." I could barely process the news. My little charity was about to become something real, something permanent. With Mark's backing, the Second Start Foundation grew at an astonishing rate. We partnered with local grocery stores for regular food donations, with schools for after-school programs, and even with city programs for housing assistance. We opened a small, proper office. A local news channel did a follow-up story, and my face was everywhere, talking about community empowerment. One evening, that news segment played on the large television in Vanessa's living room. She sat on her expensive couch, a half-empty glass of wine in her hand. She watched the report, my confident smile filling the screen. Her hand trembled slightly, causing the wine to swirl dangerously close to the rim. She clicked the TV off, sitting alone in the sudden, silent darkness. The fall was swift and brutal. Federal agents arrived at Tom's office at dawn. He was arrested for financial fraud, a massive Ponzi scheme that collapsed overnight. Every single one of their assets was frozen by lunchtime. Their bank accounts, credit cards, and properties were locked. Vanessa's glamorous social media profiles vanished without a trace. The fortress of wealth and status she had built crumbled into dust. My phone rang late that night. It was our mother, her voice thick with tears. "Chloe, it's your sister. She has nowhere to go. The banks have taken the house. Can she stay with you? Just for a little while?" I stood in the middle of my small, cozy apartment, the phone pressed to my ear. A torrent of memories flooded me, the eye roll, the public mockery, the betrayal in the group chat. Every cruel comment replayed in my mind. The part of me that was still hurting wanted to say no. I wanted her to feel a fraction of the powerlessness she'd made me feel. But then I thought of our mother's pleading voice. I thought of the name of my own charity. I took a deep, shaky breath. "Okay," I said. "She can stay." When I opened the door for her the next day, Vanessa stood there with a single suitcase, her eyes cold and distant, her chin held high. She stepped inside as if she were granting me a favor, pretending with every fiber of her being that she was still above it all. For days, Vanessa moved through my apartment like a ghost. She spent hours on her phone, her face growing paler with each call. No one would hire her. Creditors called non-stop, their voices sharp and demanding through the receiver. Then, the final blow came in the form of a certified letter. Tom, from jail, had filed for divorce. She was utterly alone. The polished, arrogant facade began to crack. Late one night, I woke to a faint sound. I crept out of my room and stood outside the bathroom door. From within, I heard the unmistakable, heart-wrenching sound of my sister trying to muffle her sobs. The sound was so raw, so full of despair, that my anger began to melt away, replaced by a deep, aching pity. The next morning, I gently approached her. "Vanessa," I said softly. "I know of a few affordable housing options through the Foundation's network. I can make some calls for you." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Her eyes, red-rimmed from crying, flashed with a remnant of her old pride. "I don't need your pity, Chloe. I don't need anything from you or your little charity." She stormed back into the guest room. A week later, we were running a large-scale grocery distribution event at a community center. The line stretched around the block. As I directed volunteers, my breath caught in my throat. There, about halfway down the line, dressed in yesterday's clothes and looking at the ground, was my sister. My feet felt rooted to the spot. I watched as the line inched forward, my heart hammering against my ribs. Vanessa kept her head down, shoulders hunched against the world. She finally reached the front table where a bright-eyed volunteer sat with a clipboard. The young girl smiled warmly. "Welcome to Second Start. Can I get your name, please?" Vanessa hesitated, her body tense. She glanced around nervously, as if expecting cameras. Finally, she leaned forward and whispered something. The volunteer, unable to hear, asked her to repeat it. A little louder, but still a broken whisper, she said, "Vanessa. Vanessa Carter." The sound of her own name in that context seemed to defeat her completely. I walked forward slowly. The volunteers nearby stopped what they were doing, sensing the heavy tension. The crowd's murmuring softened. Vanessa saw my shoes first, then slowly lifted her tear-filled eyes to meet mine. There was no smirk, no eye roll, only sheer, undiluted shame. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply reached for a pre-packed box of groceries, the same one we gave to every new person. I placed it gently into her shaking arms. My voice was calm and clear, carrying in the quiet space. "Everyone," I said, looking at her but speaking to the entire crowd, "deserves a second start." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a soft, understanding applause rippled through the line of mothers. That small act of grace was too much for Vanessa to bear. She clutched the box, buried her face in it, and burst into deep, heaving tears. Back at the apartment, Vanessa retreated into a stony silence. She stayed in her room for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she emerged and, without a word, started washing the dishes. The next morning, she showed up at the Second Start office. "Put me to work," she mumbled. She started with the jobs no one wanted, sorting donated clothes, cleaning the storage room. She worked hard but avoided my eyes, the weight of her shame a visible burden on her shoulders. Linda visited one afternoon and pulled me aside. "I see your sister is here," she noted. I sighed, expressing my confusion about how to feel. Linda patted my hand. "Remember, Chloe. Forgiveness isn't for her. It's for you. It's the final, quiet victory after you've already won." A few weeks later, I found a sealed envelope on my desk. Inside was a handwritten letter from Vanessa. The writing was messy, stained in places with dried tears. "Chloe," it began, *I have no excuses. I was jealous of your passion. I was cruel because your kindness made my life feel empty. I am so sorry for everything. *I read her words of regret and pride, my own eyes welling up. As I finished the last sentence, my email pinged. It was an official invitation to speak at a national nonprofit summit in front of hundreds of people. The contrast between the humble apology in my hand and the grand opportunity on my screen was staggering. On the stage, under the bright lights, I felt a strange calm. I told my story. I spoke about the eye rolls, the doubt, the eviction notice, and the broken-down car. I talked about turning humiliation into purpose. When I finished, the auditorium was silent for a beat, then erupted into a thunderous standing ovation. I saw Linda in the front row, clapping with tears in her eyes. As I stepped off the stage, a well-dressed woman approached me, handing me her card. "That was extraordinary," she said. "My foundation would be honored to fully fund the opening of 10 new Second Start centers across the state." I was speechless. When I returned home, the town had organized a welcome-back celebration in the community center, the very place where Vanessa had stood in line. The room was packed with volunteers, families we'd helped, and local leaders. As I gave a short speech of thanks, I spotted Vanessa standing near the back, half hidden in the shadows. She was watching me, and for the first time, there was no jealousy in her gaze, only a complex mix of pride and emotion. I looked directly at her. "And I need to thank my sister, Vanessa," I said. The crowd shifted, surprised. She taught me, in her own way, the incredible strength it takes to be resilient. Her eyes widened, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. A year later, we cut the ribbon on the 10th Second Start Center. The air was filled with music and laughter. Vanessa, now one of our head coordinators, moved through the crowd with confidence and warmth, directing new volunteers and comforting nervous mothers. She had found her purpose in service. I watched her from a distance, my heart full. She handed a box of groceries to a young mother with a baby on her hip. The woman, grateful, asked, "This place is amazing. Who started all of this?" Vanessa paused, then looked over at me. A soft, genuine smile touched her lips, one that reached her eyes. "My sister," she said, her voice filled with a quiet pride. "My sister, Chloe, started it."